Welcome to the Soul Archaeology podcast, a space for connection, resonance, witnessing, and learning. Together we'll harvest medicine from the spiral of life, sharing conversations with other embodied humans who have navigated their own initiations and found alignment with their true soul essence. With weekly astrology, energy updates, embodied conversation, and channeled teachings, this is a space for you to land and find resonance with the spiral of your own soul. Hello there, welcome back to Soul Archaeology. Happy equinox and Libra season. The equinox is the point of balance when the light and dark are equal. When the days are as long as night, where we strike that middle space, that liminal space between where we've been and where we're headed, leaving behind the warmth and vibrancy of summer, the light of summer, and heading into our more internal state of autumn and winter here in the northern hemisphere. And for those of you in the southern hemisphere, leaving winter and heading into spring. And I love these bridge seasons. I love the equinox because it really signifies a review. It gives us space to harvest, to look at what we've navigated in the more intense months of winter and summer, the seasons of extremes, where there's so much light or so much darkness. And for those of us in the northern hemisphere where I'm located, we are heading into our descent deeper into the layers of our being, into our collective consciousness, moving into a space of deep reflection, of inward introspection. And I always love that the autumn equinox is, of course, aligned with the beginning of Libra season. So we are moving from the season of Virgo, the Virgin, the season of discernment and centering, purification and distillation, reviewing our physical state, our lives, our rituals, our routines, and focusing to the axis of the self and the other. In this Libra season, which it has been over the last year and a half as the nodes have shifted into Aries and Libra, is a significant one. This is the last eclipse we will have in Libra along this axis. And it is once again bringing us into review of our relational framework, where we birth our relationships, where we connect to others from our connection to self. So this week begins with the equinox and the beginning of Libra season. We've navigated a pretty heavy-duty lunar eclipse in Pisces, although it was not a full eclipse, it was a partial eclipse. It was pretty wildly intense. I know a lot of people had a lot surface around emotions, processing so much within the dream space. And this continues over the next week as we navigate this liminal middle space between the lunar eclipse in Pisces on the 17th and the solar eclipse we have on October 2nd in Libra. So we are very much in this interesting, watery, dreamy, airy middle space. Pisces and Libra both have a tendency to dissociate, to pull out of conflict, to pull out of the intensity, and to avoid or dissociate from challenge. This is a really, really important time to notice where you are avoiding your life, where you're avoiding conflict, where you're avoiding shadow, where you are afraid to step fully into full ownership over your life. As the South Node, I talked a lot in the last episode about the South Node transiting through Libra since July of 2023. We are looking at the patterns of avoidance, dissociation, self-abandonment, and shadow aspects held within our relational framework, held within our relational patterns. The North Node being in Aries has really forced us to confront what's no longer working within our lives, to confront our relational patterns, our patterns of disconnecting from self or being too anchored to self, to not be able to see the mineral rich opportunities held within relationship, held within the hard conversations, held within conflict. In order to fortify and build strong and healthy bonds and relationships, we need conflict. They say that a bone that's been fractured and then repaired grows back stronger. And this is true of our relationships as well. In order to access the deeply fortified state of connection, the connection we truly all seek, we need rupture, we need conflict, we need to have the difficult and confronting conversations with self and with the other. And it's within these spaces of the wound, it's within these hard conversations, these ruptures, where we can deepen our connection to each other, to the other. If we don't have conflict in relationship, we stay at the surface. And this transit of the North and South Node through Libra and Aries is showing us how important conflict is, how important difficult conversations are. The shadow of Libra is to dissociate from conflict and to pull out of challenge that could potentially rock the boat in order to, quote unquote, keep the peace. But what that leaves us with is the continued pattern of polarization. And what relational conflict does is it invites us into a deeper connection to ourself as well, where we can confront our own wounds, our own shadow patterns, and the pieces and parts of us that are seeking more safety and more attunement as we open to the other. Relationships really are a constant cycle of rupture and repair. When we're invited into healthy, conscious relating, we see rupture as an opportunity to deepen into our connection to self and deepen our connection to the other person, excavating and deepening into the spaces that keep us out of intimacy. Intimacy is created through opening. Into me you see. So we have to be willing to open our wounded parts to someone else in order to create and build intimacy, which is essentially closeness. And when we're able to reveal our ego, what's beneath our ego, the parts of ourselves that we're afraid to reveal to another for fear of rejection or abandonment or pain, we're able to access a point of connection that is everlasting. So Libra season is powerful. It's been powerful the last 2 years. Last year, I remember we had a solar eclipse on my birthday on October 14th, and this year we have one on October 2nd. So we've been doing some heavy-duty relational work. Libra rules the 7th house of the zodiac. Its evolutionary goal is to relate, to experience itself reflected in the other. Through the first half of the zodiac, we are moving through subjectivity, learning and exploring our own internal landscape, our own inner world. It's when we reach Libra season, at this point in the zodiac, we begin to focus on the other half rather than only the self. We begin to explore our relational dynamics. We begin to focus on the other rather than only the self. How are we reflected in the other? Relationships are mirrors. It's our key and our gateway to the deepest healing we have available to us in this lifetime. I always tell my clients that we can do all of the internal work we want when we're alone. We can do the deepest excavation of our parts. It's so powerful and it's such important work, but it's really when we enter relationship where we are faced with our deepest work. So I work with people who we've been doing internal work together, and they land in a deeply conscious relationship, and all of their patterns come forward, all of their fears, all of their shadows. And it's because this enables us to see ourselves reflected in a more clear mirror and in a space that feels safe to process. Relational healing is healed in relationship. So when we access this seventh house, this balance point of Libra, we begin to review how we interact with the world and with the other. Relationships are the most potent alchemical portal and container. And this North Node in Aries has been teaching us that we need a secure and fortified connection to self in order to connect authentically to the world. The South Node in Libra has been teaching us that we create cords with each and every person we physically or emotionally connect with. We hold within our relational framework data and information from all of our connections and all of our relationships. We hold a karmic contract with each person we come into contact with. And at the root of these cords contain information, data, for the lessons and learnings we're meant to experience together. And this includes past life and karmic contracts, trauma bonds, and also divine alignment and partnership. When someone comes into our space that we have a cord with, it activates all of the data and information held within that space, and we feel a response. This is where we have an opportunity to heal the wounds so that we can anchor into a cord, a heart cord, and a connection that is of high alignment rather than wounding. And so many of us have relationships where we're doing this deep work together. Some people come into our lives temporarily to activate these wounds, to crack us open into a deeper connection to self, and therefore providing opportunity for us to connect to the world in a deeper, more meaningful way. We are quite literally upgrading our relationship to self, our connection to self, and therefore our relationships with others. And because we are nearing the solar eclipse in Libra, what's shadowed within our relational framework is being revealed. The beliefs we hold about ourselves attract those who will reinforce that belief. It's surfacing patterns of people-pleasing, self-abandonment, fawning, dissociation, avoidance, and highlighting the knowing that we really need a secure connection to self in order to connect authentically to the world. And with Pluto retrograding through the last degrees of Capricorn as well, it's squaring this eclipse energy through a very, very wide orb. But we're really examining our prominent patterns from the last 15 years, not only around work and money and the masculine, but also our relational framework. Are you noticing patterns come up now that you have been navigating and working on over the last 15 years? From 2006, 2007 to 2015 to 2017, and especially from 2008 as we navigate these last degrees of Pluto and Capricorn. It's important now to pay attention to who is in your space. Are they carrying similar patterns to people you have interacted with over the last 15 years? Are you showing up in a way that is familiar to old patterns and beliefs? What's being exposed right now within our relationships and our relationship with self, these mishaps and miscommunications are really just opportunities to shine a light on what's here so that we can open and communicate and connect in more authentic, heart-aligned ways. As we transmute the pain of the wound, we anchor more deeply into the higher heart and the wisdom of the higher heart. And we experience these cracking open, these ruptures to deepen intimacy. Another theme of Libra is balance. And the Libra Aries axis teaches us that Balance is an internal state. It is created within. It's a practice. Balance and harmony and the peace we so desperately seek can be found through the center point that exists within us. But it is a practice to stay connected to that space. It is a practice to show up every day, as Virgo teaches us, to connect more deeply to self, to understand what we truly need in order to feel safe, secure, and balanced and harmonious. Libra is the nervous system of the zodiac. Its evolutionary purpose is to relate, but also to balance, to harmonize. So it's always taking in data and information from the outside, the external, processing and computing to find the outcome that is most in alignment with the greater good, the group, or the other. Which is beautiful, of course, because we begin this process of evolving past navel gazing and this focus only on the self, only on our own self-development, and into raising our eyes to the external, to the world, to see how we are reflected in the world, to understand how our actions impact others, how our own internal state impacts others. And there's certainly a learning curve with Libra. It's a cardinal sign, so it initiates and it tries new things. So it's constantly experimenting. It's experimenting with what does and doesn't work. It's taking in all this new information and data, and it's trying its best to create and hold a space of equilibrium for the collective and for the group. But what can often happen in the shadow of Libra is that it abandons its own center point in order to attune to the needs of the other or the group. And as we know, this only leads to pain and suffering because it can no longer experience itself in the reflection of the other. It can no longer understand its own internal state when it's abandoned to overcompensate, overfunction, and attune to the other. So the highly evolved Libra is able to stay anchored to self while experiencing itself reflected in the world. It's able to feel the emotions and the feelings of the other as we've been navigating with this lunar eclipse in Pisces, and not dissociate, not get overwhelmed. The shadow of Libra is that it can be unhinged, flighty, indecisive, uncommitted, imbalanced, overwhelmed, dissociated, fragmented, people-pleasing, or self-abandoning. The overstimulation and hesitancy to commit, the self-abandonment patterns really come from its crossing of the descendant and into this brand new world of relating. So many Librans are or tend to become overstimulated by too much because they feel responsible for balancing the external world. And their job really is to understand that their responsibility is their own internal state that creates a harmony and balance externally. So instead of moving through attuning to the other and creating balance externally, it really needs to cultivate that first within. And these are the lessons and learnings of this time for each and every one of us. You have Libra somewhere in your chart. Looking at where Libra lands, looking at where Pisces lands will really tell you where your work lies this month. As we near this solar eclipse in Libra, I'll talk much more about this energy in next week's episode, which will be the episode of Libra, the solar eclipse in Libra that we have on October 2nd. We also have Mercury that enters Libra this week on the 26th, which officially ends this Mercury retrograde journey that we've been on since August, which brought us through Leo, it brought us through Virgo, and now we're officially closing the door on that chapter and entering into Mercury in Libra, which is going to focus on our communication in relationships as well. We have Venus entering Scorpio, which is really going to deepen us into our relational work in a more intense and committed way. Libra is the initiatory experience of experimenting in relationship, of meeting many new people, of learning about how and who you want to connect with. Scorpio deepens as we enter the 8th house. It deepens us into commitment, into the deeper layers of relating, into our fears around relationship and commitment. So this month is really about looking at the shadow held within our relational framework, held within our connection to self, where we are afraid to stay connected to self in relationship to the other. You might notice fears of abandonment, of rejection, fears of the unknown coming forward. We are very, very much in this liminal space between a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse. So we're floating in the in-between, the unknown. It is so important to find your anchor, your root, what keeps you connected to self and connected to source. To find your faith. We're beginning this deep study and course in deepening further into faith. We all need faith. Faith in something. Whether we're religious, we're spiritual, if you're atheist, where is your faith? These ruptures, these underworld journeys bring us into a deeper connection to our faith. That's the intention of it. So this week, in the next few weeks, really through September, we are being taught that, in October, we are being taught that true balance, harmony, and connection can be found through our own center point, the point that exists within each one of us. This is not an eternal state. It's not inherent, but a practice. What brings you into deeper relationship with self? What practices cultivate more safety within? Return back to those. Return back to what you've gathered through Virgo season. Libra has a tendency to overcomplicate things, to overwhelm itself with all of the decisions, all of the data, the information that's coming in. It's a cardinal air sign. So the energy is fast and it comes in quickly. If you are connected to self, the overwhelm will not pull you out. This is the ending of one relational cycle and the beginning of another. As we navigate this middle space, the next few weeks, tend to your inner landscape. Take space for what's needing nourishment within you. This is a very, very, very big time. I am so, so grateful, as always, for your presence, for your shares, for your messages, responses on social media, email, and through the podcast. Last week we had a record in listens, so I'm just so grateful. Thank you for sharing this with your friends and your family, for sharing it on social media. It truly means the world, and it really, really helps me produce this podcast and keep it going. I am still offering the replay of the Eclipse Portal workshop, which you can find on my Instagram link. You can also find it in the show notes as well. This is something that you can really do and repeat, honestly, for the next few years, because we have this powerful lunar eclipse in Pisces, which is opening the beginning to a new eclipse portal, a new eclipse access, and we're closing one with the South Node in Libra. So there's a lot of information and data here available to be worked through and worked with. I recommend that workshop to use to really carry you through this eclipse season. Once again, thank you for being here. I appreciate all of you so much. I hope you're having a beautiful eclipse portal, navigating these 2 weeks in between eclipses. It can feel like you're in the eye of a storm, like you're just witnessing what's leaving, what's coming, what's going. It is a time of surrender, of trust, of deepening into faith, trusting that this storm has your highest and greatest good in mind. So it's bringing and pulling out what it knows you need to receive or let go of. Trust, trust, trust. I'm sending you so, so much love. Have a beautiful week, and I'll talk to you next week.